Today in our 2016 Chevrolet Silverado 2500, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the CURT EZR double lock underbed gooseneck trailer hitch with installation kit, part number C611-624. Here's what our CURT EZR double lock gooseneck hitch is going to look like. Now, this is going to allow us to tow a gooseneck trailer safely and securely behind our truck. And what I really like about this kit is the fact when we're not towing, we can remove the ball and flip it over, and it'll store right back in, but we'll have full bed access and we won't have to worry about working around the gooseneck ball. And then to keep any kind of dirt and grime out from the inside of our gooseneck, CURT provides us with this rubber cover that simply just snaps in place. Another unique feature to this kit, unlike most kits where you're going to have to measure out where you're going to cut your hole for the gooseneck ball, CURT provides us with a template, so we're actually going to be putting that into the center section and mounting it underneath and drilling a pilot hole from the bottom coming up. That way we have the perfect centered hole when we come up top to drill our hole. We're not going to have to worry about mismeasuring from the end of our tailgate, taking in any kind of factors like a spray-in bed liner or a plastic bed liner. It's just going to make it a lot easier and a lot more safe without having to worry about drilling that large hole in your bed. Now, like most kits, it is going to have the retractable safety chain loops that are going to be spring-loaded, but what's going to make this stand apart is that they're going to be 5/8 inch thick opposed to most that are going to be 1/2 inch thick. Now, even though they are thicker, we're still going to have plenty of room to get even those large hooks in place. CURT also added in this nice chrome ring around the trim, which is going to give it that finished look, but also keep that nice low profile. The ball is going to actually feature 2 holes, and that's because our hitch is going to use 2 pins to keep it nice and secure. Now on the other side, we're going to notice it has some slots, and that's going to prevent the ball from spinning, and it's only going to allow the ball to go in one way. If we line it up with the pin inside, it'll slide in, but if we turn it around, it'll actually stop it from going in. The ball itself is going to be a standard 2 5/16 ball, and our hitch is going to have a 6,000 pound vertical load limit along with a 30,000 pound gross trailer weight rating. Now, with all of that in mind, I do want to recommend that you check your Silverado's owner's manual and you never exceed the manufacturer's recommended weight. The way we're going to put the ball in place is going to be through this handle right here. To unlock it so we can take the ball out, simply pull the handle and rotate it clockwise. Now when we put the ball back in place, we can rotate it counterclockwise and let it move in, and it'll lock in. Our kit is designed specifically to fit your truck, so we're not going to have to worry about any kind of cutting or any other kind of modifications to get the plates in against the frame. It's just going to use 2 existing weld nuts in the side, making things a lot easier to get it in place. All the brackets in our kit are going to have a nice black powder coat finish on them to resist rust and corrosion, as well as blending in nicely with the frame. All of our main components are going to be mounted underneath the bed, and that's what's going to allow us that full bed access when we're not towing. Now, the upside to all of that is that we're not going to have to remove the bed in order to get it in place, making installation that much easier. Even with it being under the bed, we're not going to have to worry about any kind of interference between our exhaust or any of the other components. When towing a gooseneck trailer, it is always a good idea to look into some suspension enhancements, that way we don't wear out our factory components. And here at eTrailer.com, we have a lot of different options from leaf spring style, jout style, or even air helper springs. Just make sure you check the compatibility with your new CURT Gooseneck Hitch. So now that we've seen what our gooseneck looks like and gone over some of the features, let's show you how to get it installed. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to lower our spare tire to get it out of the way. And then if we move forward just a bit on the passenger side, if we come up right above the exhaust, we're going to have to remove our heat shield. Now we're going to have 1 bolt at the very back cross section going across the bed here. And then on the frame rail, we're going to have 1 on the side. And then if we go towards the very front, we're going to have 2 more. To take those bolts out, you're going to want to grab a 13mm ratcheting wrench or a socket so we can pull them out. And once you have all the bolts removed, we can pull our heat shield out, and we're not going to be reinstalling this. We're over on the passenger side, and we're going to need to remove our wheel well cover and there's going to be a lot of little fasteners holding it in place. So we're going to grab a T15 Torx bit and pull all of them out. And hold on to all the fasteners and the wheel well liner because we will reinstall it later. Once you have the fasteners removed, we'll go ahead and reach up, start pulling our wheel well liner out. We just had to bend it a little bit to get it out of the way. We pull it out and set it aside, and we'll repeat that same process on the driver's side. So our rear crossbar is going to be the flat one with no angles on it. It's going to have several threaded holes in it. You're going to want to take one of the 1/2-inch bolts from our kit. You're going to want to run it through the threaded holes to make sure you clean out any kind of powder coat or any other debris that's inside, so we won't have to fight with it whenever we get it in place and go to put our hardware in. You're going to want to do that for all the threaded holes. Just run a bolt in and out and make sure that it threads nicely. Now we're also going to notice that the holes aren't directly centered on the bar. They are just slightly offset to one side. When we put the bar in, you want to make sure that those holes are going towards the frame or closest to the frame. So we're going to take our cross member and going right above the tire, and in front of that hat channel on the bed, we can lay it flat, and we're going to slide it going in between the bed and the frame. We're going to slide it all the way across until it spans to the other side. So to make room for our front cross member to go in place, I'm actually going to take a wrench and I'm going to put it right on this channel right here in this little lip. And I'm going to actually just bend it outward. You just want to work your way around and kind of go slowly so you don't cause any damage. But that way we have enough room to get our cross member in place. That way we don't have to cut anything, we can just bend it and then bend it back later on. Now when we put our front cross member in, that's going to be the L-shaped one. That's going to have some holes on one side and can be completely flat on the other side. You're going to want the flat side to go up towards the bed and the holes to be facing towards the back of the truck. So we'll go in front of our rear section, right where we made that bend. And if you need to, you may need to bend a little bit more, but once we have enough room, we can slide our front cross member in place. Now for our rear cross member, we are going to have to rotate it so that the holes are facing to the front and back. Now you can start, and if you have enough room, you can just rotate it by hand. But if you run out of room, because it is going to kind of bottom out on the bed of the truck there, you're going to take a wrench and you can use it to help leverage it and just rotate it. But again, make sure that those holes are towards the ground or towards the bottom of the frame here. We can get our center section ready to get put in place. Now to make it a little bit easier on ourselves, just so we know how it's going in, the tapered section here and where the hole is more offset, that's going to be going towards the back of the vehicle, and this is the bottom of our center section. We're going to have 4 square holes on the forward section of our hitch. So we're going to take 2 carriage bolts, and from the inside, going towards the outside, we're going to pass them through, going through the hitch like that. And to help us and make sure that our hitch is going to stay in place, they do provide us with these little keepers, and that's going to keep that bolt from getting pushed back through. And you just push it on and loosely thread it into place. And then I'll keep that bolt from falling back through. Now they do provide us with 2 of them, so we'll go and put it on the other one as well. Another key factor before we put our center section in place is you want to have the template and the center locator in place. Now this is just an orange cross section, and it has little tabs on the end here, and we want these tabs to go in from the top going into the hole. And this is just going to sit right in there so that when we get it in place, we know where to drill, making things a lot easier. We don't have to guess inside the bed, and we don't have to do any measuring. Now since our exhaust is so close to the top of our bed here and where our center section is going to go into place, we're actually going to lower it down. So you're going to take some spray lubricant, and if we move forward right by the fuel tank. You can go ahead and spray those 2 rubber hangers down. You're going to take a pry bar and you're just going to want to pry that rubber isolator off of the hanger. And once you have that one removed, you're going to want to go ahead and remove the other one as well. That way we get as much room as possible to lower it down. Now if you still need more room, we can move back towards the tailpipe and we're going to have another hanger there. Right by where our spare tire shield is, it's going to be right behind it. So we can spray that one down and take that one down as well. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to get our hitch put into place. So we can line up the holes in our front cross member with the center section so that they go through the bracket, making sure everything lines up, and the rest of the holes are going to line up as well. Now where the bolts are passing through our center section, we're going to take one of our 1/2-inch flange nuts from our kit. We're just going to loosely install it. It's tight enough to keep everything together. We'll do that for the other bolts as well. Now for the rear cross member and center section, we're going to be taking a 1/2-inch bolt, followed by a conical tooth washer. Now you want to make sure that those teeth are facing the hitch. And we're going to pass the washer over the bolt. And coming from the inside of our hitch here, we're going to thread it from the inside into our rear cross member. And we're going to do that for all the remaining holes that we have in our center section. Again, you just want to get it hand tight so everything will hold together. Just make sure all the holes are lined up. On our front cross member area, the center section towards the passenger side on the very edge here, that's going to go through just like we did with our other one. We're going to take our 1/2-inch carriage bolts, we're going to pass them through and secure it down with a 1/2-inch flange nut. Now the driver's side is going to be a little bit different. So once we have this one in place, we'll move over to the driver's side. The driver's side is going to be secured with a 1/2-inch flange nut, but instead of coming from the inside going to the out, we're going to be coming from the front going towards the center of our hitch here. We're going to take our 1/2-inch carriage bolt, followed by a square spacer block. We're going to pass our bolt through, and we're going to come from the outside from our cross member. We're going to pass our bolt through and then secure it down with a 1/2-inch flange nut. So we're going to want to come back with a 3/4 inch socket or wrench, and you're going to want to snug up all your hardware. You don't want to go ahead and crank down on it. You just want it nice and snug to take up the gap between the center section and the cross members. And also making sure that your carriage bolts are seated all the way. So now that we have our center section attached to our cross members, we can get ready to put our side plates in. Now since this is a 2016, the holes we're going to be using to mount it are going to be the round holes on the end here, as well as in between these 2 tabs towards the bottom. Now we're on the passenger side, and the way we're going to know we have the right bracket is this long section that has this loop towards the end. That's going to be going towards the back of the truck, and these tabs are going to be sticking out. So we're going to take it, and we can loosely put it in place. Just get everything kind of halfway lined up. And we can see that the round hole is going to line up with a couple weld nuts that are already in the frame. Now if they're not lined up, that's okay. You're just going to want to move your cross member and your center section, move it around enough so you can get those holes lined up. Now to secure our side plate to our frame, we're going to take one of our 5/8 bolts. We're going to follow it up with a 5/8 lock washer. Then we're going to have a large flat washer that's going to go over that. Then we can just loosely thread it into place. And we can do that for the other hole as well. Once you have both side plates in place loosely, you're going to want to push that center section along with the cross members as far back against this hatch handle as you can to make sure it's nice and square on the truck. To attach our side plates to our center section and cross members, we're going to take a 1/2-inch bolt with another one of those conical tooth washers. Again, making sure that the teeth are going to face the plate. And we're going to go through the rear section here, and there's going to be a threaded hole that's in our cross member that we can bolt it into. Now you just want to get a few threads in there. You don't want to crank on it too much, that way we still have a little bit of wiggle room to get everything else in. Now for the forward mounting hole, we're going to have a 5/8 carriage bolt, and coming from the inside, we're going to grab another one of our square spacer blocks that's going to match up with our carriage bolt. We're going to pass it through, and then we're going to go through the inside, going through our front cross member and coming out the back. Then we can take a 5/8 flange nut and we can secure it all down. Now that we have all this in place, we're going to go and repeat that on the other side as well. Now if you come back underneath your truck and you look at the center section, you're going to want to make sure that it's evenly pushed all the way back so it's nice and square, but it's also even. Now the easiest way to check that is if you come to the edge of your hitch, you can look at where it lines up with the ribs on the bottom of the bed and make sure that it lines up on the other side as well. Now if you need to adjust things a little bit here and there, a pry bar or a rubber mallet will make things a lot easier rather than just trying to use your hand to move it. I'm going to come back with a 15/16 inch socket and snug up my two 5/8 bolts on the side of my frame rail brackets. And we'll do that for the other side as well. So I'm going to come back with a torque wrench, and the first bolts we're going to want to torque down are going to be our frame bracket bolts. It's going to be those two 5/8 bolts, and we'll find the torque spec in our instructions. We'll repeat that for all of our remaining frame bolts. So with our outer bolts torqued down, the next set we're going to work on is going to be the center section bolts. And we'll find that torque spec in our instructions as well. We'll repeat that for all the remaining bolts. Finally, where our side plates meet our crossbars, we can torque that down as well. Now the rear bolt's going to be a 1/2 inch, so we're going to grab a 3/4 inch socket and torque that down to the specified amount in the instructions. And we'll do that for the other side too. And for that 5/8 bolt towards the front of our truck, that's going to be a 15/16 socket we'll use, and we'll find those specs in our instructions. And we'll torque the other side as well. So with our hitch all torqued down, we're going to need to drill a hole so that we can put our ball in place. Now that's where that orange template we put in before we install the center section is going to come into play. We're going to grab a rather small drill bit and we're going to go straight up. And if you look into the inner hole right here, you'll see that there's a little spot where your pilot drill bit is going to go into. We're going to drill straight from underneath the bed, going through all the way up through that little section in our template. Now on either side, we're going to have two small holes going through our hitch. That's where will be our safety chain connection point. So we're going to need to drill that out. So I have a 5/8 drill bit here. I'm just going to go right into the center of that hole and go a little bit just so I can get a nice mark on where the center is going to be. Now we can come back with a smaller drill bit and drill ourselves a pilot hole. So now we're going to come back with that 5/8 drill bit and drill the holes out to a full 5/8 inch. So with the holes drilled on the driver's side, we're going to go and repeat that on the passenger side. However, if you look, our holes are going to be right above where our exhaust is. So we can still do that same process drilling from under the bed. You just may need to grab an extra set of hands to help you pull down on the exhaust to give you a little bit more working room. So here's where our 4 holes that we drilled were, as well as the one in the center for our pilot hole. Now we're going to grab a 4-inch hole saw so we can cut a hole so that our ball can fit right down in there. I just took a piece of wood that I had laying around And I have several holes drilled in it for different size hole saws. That way I don't have to worry about my drill skipping around and scratching up my bed. And it'll make it nice because once we have it in place, we can stand on the board, giving ourselves a little bit extra stability. Now the trick to cutting with the hole saw is you want to go high speed and very low pressure. Now when you're cutting, you want to cut and then take a look because you don't want to go through that template and into the center section. And we can see we removed the bed material. If I lift up the board, we can see that our template is still there. So we can just reach under and we can grab our template and pull it right out. I'm going to come back with a hand file and just smooth out the edges on all the holes that I drilled. That way there's no burrs and I don't have to worry about cutting up my hand. I'm going to clean up all the metal shavings that we made. So it's never a good idea to leave exposed metal on your vehicle. So I'm going to come back with a little bit of clear spray paint and kind of fill in the little bit of areas that are exposed. And the reason why I'm using clear is because depending on what color your truck bed is or if you have a liner, we're really not going to be able to see it, so we're not going to have to worry about it discoloring the bed or anything like that. Our kit is going to come with a little rubber weather strip that's made to go around the 4-inch hole that we cut. Now we're not going to be using this since we did spray the edge, so we're going to go ahead and set this aside. If you do choose to use it, it is split, so you just open it up and you're going to press it along the edge of the hole that you cut until it's nice and tight in place. And we are going to have a chrome trim ring that's going to go right on top of our hitch here. Now if we look, there's going to be 3 holes that are drilled into it, and you're going to want to make sure that you get the side that has the bevel going down so that our bolts will sit nice and flush once we put it in place. So we can take our ring and line up the holes with the holes in our hitch and grab our hardware and secure it down. They're going to provide you with 3 cap screws. So we're just going to loosely put them in place, make sure everything's lined up. Just put them in there a few turns by hand. We grab a 3mm Allen socket and we can tighten those bolts up. So we're going to have a couple U-bolts acting as our safety chain loops, and we're just going to drop them down through the holes that we drilled on either side, and we can go underneath and secure it with the hardware. Then where our U-bolts came out underneath, we're going to take a flat washer, and we're going to slide it over the stud. We're going to follow that up with a spring and then another flat washer. And then finally we're going to secure it with a 5/8 lock nut. And we'll repeat that same combination for our other 3 remaining studs. I'm going to come back with a 15/16 inch socket and I'm going to tighten up those nuts until the bottom is just flush with the bottom of the nut or just barely past it. And we'll repeat that for all the remaining nuts. So we're going to take our handle now, and on the end of it we're going to have a small hole, and the other end we're going to have a red rubber grip. So we're going to feed the straight end through that frame bracket that's on the side, and we're just going to push it in right now just so it'll hold itself, and we can go underneath and make sure that it's positioned properly. And if you need to, you can push it back out because we're going to want to go through the hole that's in the hitch right here, start feeding it through, and that'll line up with another spot in the hitch right between our safety chain loops. Just going to bring it right towards the center section. Now in the center section, we're going to have these 2 holes that are right in the middle of where our ball is going to go. So we can take our dual pin and making sure that that hole going through the side as well as the large hole in the end is on the top. We can line it up with the 2 holes. We're going to go ahead and put it in place. For our handle, we're going to take one of our 3/8 flat washers We're going to slide it over the end and slide it into position. And then we're going to take the included spring that's with our kit. And we're going to slide it over the end of the handle. Now you may have to kind of work at it and feed it in place, but then we're going to slide our handle into the dual pin. Now to secure the handle to the pin, they're going to provide us with a small bolt. You're going to want to go through the hole in the pin, and you may have to rotate the handle, pull it back and forth to get it to line up. Once you have that bolt pushed in for the handle, you're going to want to grab a 7mm socket and thread it in the rest of the way. Now on the other side of that bolt, they're going to provide us with a small locking nut that we're going to have to thread on. Now the head of the bolt is going to be a 7mm and the head of the nut is going to be an 8mm. So if you need to, you can grab 2 wrenches, 2 sockets, or however you can. You just want to make sure that you get that nut on there and everything's nice and secure. So I'm going to be using an 8mm wrench and a 7mm socket to snug that up. So with everything in place, we can start working on putting our exhaust back up and putting everything back together. To make it a little bit easier to get the exhaust back in place, you spray the hangers down with a little more spray lubricant. It should slide on a little bit easier. So I'm going to come back with that wrench. I'm just going to start gently bending that tab back down. Just want to get it as close as you can to where it originally was. So when we put our liner back in place, all the mounting points will line up. Just going to put a little bit of clear coat since the paint did start chipping from the stretching and bending we were doing earlier. And put our wheel well liner back in. Just kind of want to work at it until you can get it in the correct position. And we're going to put all our fasteners back in. Now over on the driver's side, we have our wheel liner back in, but as you can see, our handle is going to interfere and hit our wheel liner. So there's a simple solution. It's just kind of a soft cardboard type material. We're just going to cut a notch out right here so our handle has room to move. So I'm going to be using a pair of scissors. You use scissors, a pair of side cutters, whatever you have available. Just want to make sure you can get through the material all the way. Just take a razor knife and cut across the top so we got plenty of room for our handle to come out. With our section cut out, we can go ahead and pull on the handle. We're going to rotate it slightly clockwise, and then I'll put it in the locked position. We can grab the ball. Now you want to make sure that this notched end with the holes in it is going towards the driver's side. We can drop it in and move back to the handle and lock it down. To lock the ball in place, simply pull out just a little bit and rotate the handle counterclockwise, and it should go back into place. Now we can hook up to our trailer and hit the road. And that'll finish up your look at the CURT EZR double lock underbed gooseneck trailer hitch with installation kit, part number C611-624 on our 2016 Chevrolet Silverado 2500.